Hi folks, and welcome to the inaugural episode of my Netflix movie review show. Why did I want to start this movie review show? Well, I did a few videos for SourceFed and I really enjoyed myself. Also, I'm a big movie watcher, goer. When I was younger and didn't have kids, I mean, that was something we always did in the summertime, always going to movies, seeing what was coming out. Now that it's a little bit harder for me to get out, I find that Netflix is just an easier mode for me to watch movies I haven't seen before. And that's a big thing for me. There's a lot of movies on Netflix that I haven't really watched, and I always seem to find myself sticking to shows and movies that I'm familiar with. And so this is a chance also for me to sort of break out of my own comfort zone and sort of watch new movies. And I see it, they seem interesting to me, but I never really sit down and take the time to really watch them. So the first movie I watched was Ironclad, directed by Jonathan England, starring Brian Cox as Baron Albany, James Purefoy, I think that's how you pronounce his name, as a Knights Templar, and Paul Giamatti as the antagonist, King John. Now, this movie takes place during the reign of King John, just after he signs the Magna Carta, and it deals with an event in what would become known as the First Barons' War, a war which was fought after John signed the Magna Carta but didn't really stick to the terms of his agreements. So it would be King John against many of the nobilities and the barons and the dukes of England at the time, and this is a movie about a particular event in that war, which is the Siege of Rochester. Essentially, in the movie what happens is Brian Cox's character, Albany, and brings in the Knights Templar played by James Purefoy and a very eclectic group as to come in and take control of the castle and hold it basically to keep John from getting back to London to solidify his forces in an attempt to push back the barons and basically roll back the Magna Carta. Now, first off, one of the things I really enjoyed about the movie was the historical setting. It felt so real. Like, they really did their research, the way people dressed, the way people talked, most of all. You didn't have a soundtrack filled with classic rock hits as a backdrop. I mean, I always, A Knight's Tale, I think of movies in that time period. And while I do enjoy that movie as someone who studied history in university, I watch it and cringe at how insanely unrealistic it is, the time period. And movies like this I just always find very refreshing, especially when they're so well done as this movie really is. I think Jonathan English, who's the director of this movie, did a fantastic job. I feel like he really did his research on the events of what happened, even to the point of using lines that were recorded by the people who were there with the king, and used those lines in the script. There's this particular scene in the movie when King John and his forces are laying siege to Rochester, and they said the best way to do it is to collapse part of the castle so that they can get inside. And back in those days, what people would do was they would tunnel under the foundation of a building and then set fire to it, basically weakening the foundation. And one of the ways of doing that was to stuff those caverns full to the brim with pigs, because apparently pig fat burns very, very hot and very long. And he uses a line something to the effect of, "Bring me, a dozen pigs that are fat but are not good for eating." And they use that line in the movie, and in my research and learning about this particular movie, learning about the events that it's based on, that line is actually recorded. That's something that John actually said in those events. For me, that is like just super, super points. I love that. I thought that was great. But acting, Brian Cox, I love Brian Cox. I think a lot of stuff I've seen him in, it's so great, and he just really gets it as Albany. Now, admittedly, they go a little bit far with the whole Magna Carta idea. Yes, Magna Carta did grant rights to a lot of the nobility, but we're not granting freedom and rights to everybody. Let's be honest here. But still, his acting is so great, and you really believe him as his character. Now, James Purefoy as the Knight Templar who's in this movie, he's good, don't get me wrong, and the action sequences he's in, he's great. There's not a lot of stylized choreography in the action sequences either. It's very much, you feel like this is how people fought back in those days. I mean, you're just swinging chunks of steel at each other. And he's really good and all that, but I didn't really get into him as much as I did with Brian Cox's character as well. Paul Giamatti as King John, you just despise him in this role. The music in it, again, I'm happy they didn't go with any sort of weird modern soundtrack. They went with something that made it gave it a very epic sort of feel to it, even though clearly this wasn't a huge, big box office movie. It still was really well done. I could really see this being like almost like a mini-series on BBC and still have been just as epic and just as well done. The one thing I would say I did not like about it, two things really. First off, in the action sequences, I get what Jonathan England's trying to do with shaking the camera everywhere, giving that sense of you're really in battle with these guys, but I want to see the battle. I want to see what's going on. I can't see anything if you're shaking the camera all over the place, dude. The other thing, the other characters that are in the movie, for example, Jason Fleming plays a guy named Beckett who is just sleazy as all get out. The first time you really see the man, he's in bed with a whore. And while he does, you do see a little bit of growth with him, and you get some personality. I really would have liked to explore other characters in the movie a little bit more, and which is why I think it would have been really great as sort of a mini-series. Maybe you could even do a whole mini-series about this War of the Barons. I think that would be really fascinating if it was done really well. Now, there is this love interest they give to James Purefoy's character in the form of Kate Massara as Isabel. She's sort of the wife of the nobleman or whoever who's running the castle. And they, they have this relationship, and she's basically trying to get into his pants because he's so unattainable because he's a Knights Templar, and he's living by this certain code, and eventually she gets into his pants. And I get they're trying to, they're throwing in some eye candy, and that's all well and good, but I feel like it was totally unnecessary. It didn't give any greater depth to his character, and she didn't really do anything aside from sleep with, the knight, and then at the very end of the movie, maybe she fought a little bit, and that was it. She didn't do anything really in the movie. I just felt like she was just sort of put there as like a nod to the fact that, oh, well, we need a love interest in this movie to help move it along. Why? You didn't need to. It's a great story. Just tell it like it is. So people who watched it on Netflix give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I'd say 3.5, maybe 4 out of 5 even. I think this is a really, really great movie. I highly suggest it if you're into sort of historical pieces and that sort of medieval era. I think it's really well acted, and the fact that it's really based and stays as close as possible to the actual events of what happened in that war and in this siege, I think really, for me, gives it huge brownie points. Question of the day for you guys on this one: what is your favorite period piece historical movie? It could be from medieval periods, it could be from Second World War, it could be from anything. Just what is your favorite period piece movie? Let me know in the comments down below. And next time we'll be watching. So if you enjoyed my review, hit the like button, make sure you share with your friends. If you haven't already, you can subscribe right here. If you haven't seen my Star Trek videos, here's a link right here. And yeah, until next time, guys, my name is Huff, and I'm watching movies on Netflix as Easy and Funny Babysitter. Bye.